Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name's Heather. I have a business called Red Ibis Coaching, so that explains the channel name. But more than that, I have a lot of other interests. So you may hear me talking about a lot of different things on this channel because coaches are people and coaching is not my whole life. There are lots of other things I'm interested in and lots of things that I think, lots of experiences I've had that shape the way I approach coaching. So you can think of the coaching part as a jumping off point, but there are a lot of other conversations that we can have. I have a master's in applied psychology and positive psychology and coaching psychology, and that matters because it's a little bit different. Most coaches go through a program that's a lot shorter, that is not psychology based, not evidence based in terms of psychology. Maybe some of them are, but it's not at the master's level. So this sets me apart and gives me a unique style of coaching. I'm going to talk today once more about women of color and their workplace well-being experiences in Ireland because I said I would share the findings from my study, which I didn't do in the last video. So again, I was researching the strengths-based activity, which is a positive psychology intervention, which is supposed to support or increase well-being based on how people use their strengths. And this was used to test whether or not that changed or influenced women of color's workplace well-being experiences in Ireland. So I talked about the study design last time, which is interesting to people who want to know like what makes a study, how do you put these things together and make some meaning out of it. So I'll tell you the results now based on the study. So the PERMA profiler was something that was submitted to me from the participants based on a survey before anything happened and then after all of the intervention was finished. In between that time, so after they did the survey and before they did the final survey, they also tried a strengths-based positive psychology intervention where they would do one short activity and then journal on it. They did that for 5 days, journaled on it for 5 days, submitted their journal entries for 5 days, and then before they did the last survey, we met together in an interview setting and they told me about their workplace well-being experiences as well as how they experienced the surveys and the strengths-based intervention activities. So the results of the PERMA profiler showed that the dimensions of relationships, accomplishment, and overall well-being had a significant effect. So that means at this time, with these variables, this style of testing, with these particular individuals in this particular time of their lives, something changed, something shifted for them in terms of how they felt about relationships, accomplishment, and overall well-being. So it could be useful for people who are women of color working in Ireland to try a strengths-based intervention, and it may make them feel better about relationships, their accomplishments, and overall well-being because they're using their strengths, their own personal strengths, to support them in their everyday life and focusing on their intrinsic value, so internal locus of control. There was also a thematic analysis component, so the journal entries and the interview, that's qualitative. I took that information and analyzed the transcripts from the interviews and found themes. So different patterns were showing up in terms of things that were repeated over and over again. So different people interviewed at different times were saying similar things. And so you pull that data together until you start to figure out what the patterns are, and you try to make sense of that. And so the themes that I took from these interviews were social hyper awareness, a resiliency requisite, Irish insularity, perceived conditions of workplace well-being, navigating adversity, and experiences of support. So I'm looking at the actual paper because I want to give you what I captured in the moment and not just what I remember writing, because we try to be as accurate as possible when we're doing scientific research. So, in terms of social hyper-awareness, what would it mean? Well, you hear hyper, which means like extra, and then awareness. So you're paying attention to everything in your environment, particularly the social aspects, right? Because when you're a person of color in an environment where people that look like you are not present, it actually often becomes an issue in some way. Eventually, you're going to hear someone say something weird or treat you in a way that makes you feel like maybe it is about your race, or just you'll have this sense that people are judging you or making assumptions about you because of your race. So it puts you on high alert. Not necessarily that you're defensive all the time, but that you're constantly overanalyzing what people are saying, trying to figure out if your behavior is being perceived the way you intend it to be perceived, trying to figure out if the way you're receiving other people's behavior is the way that they want you to receive it, or if you're reading into it too much, or if people really are being assholes, or if they think you're being a bitch. Like, all of that can just create this other deeper layer of stress beyond workplace stress. And it can just feel really heavy and really overwhelming. So within that theme are some sub-themes. So we looked at the overarching theme, which is social hyper-awareness, and drilling down, there are some other themes that emerge that are not as noticeable as the top theme, but are related. So one of them is identity uncertainty. So people who emigrated from one country to Ireland, or people who were born in Ireland but are not white, still struggle with identity because, for whatever reason, we don't need to go into why, because that is not my business. This is an Ireland problem. I can't solve it. I can only tell you what I'm seeing, what people told me. Only white Irish people are perceived as being Irish. If you're not white, even if you're born in Ireland, even if you have Irish citizenship, there are certain groups of people, maybe everyone, who will not necessarily think that you're Irish upon meeting you, even if you have an Irish accent, even if you went to school in Ireland. There's something about being white that makes people feel like, I'm Irish if I'm white. Your identity is in question if you're not. And then if you're an immigrant, you come to Ireland, and whoever you were in your country, whatever identity you established there, it changes when you enter a different country. And that can feel like a lot for people. Like, if you were a super high performer in a job in your country, but then in Ireland you enter a workplace environment where you don't feel like you're set up for success, that can be really stressful and cause you to question your identity. Am I who I thought I was? And if you have a mixed race identity where you say, I'm Scottish, and Irish and Jamaican, or I'm French and I'm Nigerian, or some other identity where your parents are two or more different races. That creates another level of identity uncertainty because, hey, even in the US, it look at me, you see, I know people are like, what's going on here? What could this mean? Look at the color of my skin. What is it? Can you trust me? Am I one of you? Am I going to see you for how you want to be seen? Am I going to understand your experience the way you understand it? You might not trust me because I'm not fully black, or because you don't think I'm fully black, but actually you don't know. But just based on what you're seeing, you're making some kind of assumption. And that's what a lot of mixed race people experience every day. So there are people, whether in customer facing or just, with coworkers, people constantly saying, oh, you're too whatever, I don't think you're Irish, or your skin is dark, or you act so white, or whatever. That adds up. So even if outside of work you feel pretty good about your identity, at work that can feel really precarious, unfortunately. The next sub-theme was the social awareness paradox. So that's when you, as an immigrant or a person of color, go into an Irish work environment, particularly if there's a lot of white people in the work environment, and you've got that social hypo awareness. You're paying attention all the time. You're trying to make sure you don't mess up anything in terms of the social cues and how you're supposed to behave. And then Irish people are just doing whatever the fuck they want. They're not thinking about you at all. They're not curious about you at all. They're not noticing your discomfort about things. They're not letting you in on their jokes. They're not telling you about landmarks that they're talking about and everyone knows what they're talking about. You're super focused on trying to make sure you do everything right, and Irish people are just hanging out. They don't have to think about any of that, and they're not going to think about any of that in terms of how you're experiencing them or how you're experiencing the workplace, and that's the paradox. So the second theme was the resiliency requisite. If you're an immigrant coming into Ireland or you're a person of color in Ireland, you gotta be resilient, baby. You have to be resilient the moment you step into any place where there are other people. You have to have a thicker skin. You have to be funnier. You have to be working harder. You have to be more educated. You have to be more well spoken. And that is in addition to paying attention to what everyone else is thinking about you and wondering if the identity that you say you are is going to be accepted. You have to be resilient. You have to be stronger. You have to be more, you have to be able to laugh at things more easily. You have to be really every day psyching yourself up. I can do this. I feel good. I'm going to do things that make me feel good. I'm going to try to give people the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to think about the best possible intent. And that's something you constantly have to have like running like software in the background just to function. Because you know that you're going to hit some kind of discrimination. You know that there's going to be something that could just chip away at your well-being if you're not careful, because you are not like other people and you're aware of it. And sometimes people make you aware of it by saying it to your face, and sometimes you just feel it. So the third theme is Irish insularity. So this is a little bit different than the social awareness paradox where they're not paying attention. This goes deeper because we're talking about in-group, out-group thinking. So Irish people, they bond on similarities. Most people do. It's not just Irish people, but we're talking about Ireland for now. There's something called bounded solidarity, where people most value those who are geographically closest, and it makes it difficult for outsiders to feel as though they have legitimacy. Do you have to be an immigrant to be considered an outsider? No, because we already talked about the fact that white people in Ireland often make the mistake of thinking that anyone who is not white is not Irish. Okay? So, Irish insularity is this really just this cluelessness, and it shows up in things like talking about culture. You ask an Irish person about culture, they'll talk about trad culture, and then you'll say, what about the other cultures that are represented in Irish culture? And they'll say, what do you mean? Or, I don't think about that. Or, it hasn't occurred to me. That feels really bad if you're not a white Irish person, because you are not included in that, and Irish people don't think about you at all. And it's really fucking weird. It's weird to know that. So within Irish insularity, within that theme, there was conditional social capital. So social capital is my reputation and my network helps me in life. So maybe it's just I have a strong social circle, but it could also be because I know so and so, they're going to help me get a better job, or I know Dan and Dan's going to get me promoted because Dan knows this guy and this guy is his dad and such and such and so and whatever, you know. That sort of thing creates this social capital. It's a different kind of wealth. It's not a wealth that is visible in terms of like how much money you have, but it's a wealth in terms of what you have access to based on your social conditions and what people think of you and your reputation. So, you know, if you've got a wealthy family with a certain name, you have more social capital than someone who's got a Nigerian last name and just came to Ireland last year. In addition to just that sort of thing, that overall kind of like an atmosphere and environment of having that social capital, it's also as simple as like you are hearing about jobs before they ever get posted anywhere because of your network, because of the people that you know. How is an immigrant going to, they don't have that. They don't have that kind of access. And again, it's not only Ireland that this happens to, but we're talking about Ireland here. Another thing within the social capital is just like, if you're a white Irish person, no one's ever going to say something that's not right to you about like how dark you are. No one's ever going to say something to you about like, I'm looking at this quote because I want to see if I can tell you. No one's going to be able to translate things for you. You know what I mean? Like the social translation, what the person said versus what they meant. And because Irish culture is like high context in some ways. Like you have to know the jokes, you have to know the slang, you have to understand tone and body language, and is this person being real or are they fake? And will I ever know? Sometimes you won't. And so that's another subtext of social capital. The fourth theme is navigating adversity. So this showed up in different ways. It could be a workplace incident. It could be, wow, the customers at my job are really fucking racist and my manager's not going to do a thing about it, and I'm still just going to have to hear them constantly on me, constantly telling me that I don't belong here every day, and I just have to put up with it. Or even like your social media experience. You are posting, just minding your own business as a person of color living in Ireland, having every right to be there just like anyone else. And the comments, people saying, get out. People saying, go back to where you came from. People saying, you're not Irish. People saying, oh yeah, you're dark, aren't you? How the fuck are you supposed to walk into work, especially a new workplace, but any workplace, truly any workplace, anytime, however long you've been there, doesn't matter, and not wonder if that's what people really think about you all the time? So there's that kind of like social undertone. It's covert, it's overt, it's always there, and you're just expected to figure it out. If there's a problem that comes up and there's a racial layer to it, and even if there isn't, it feels like there could be and you won't know, you've got to figure it out. And even if you've got a really good network of white Irish people to help you, Irish friends, an Irish parent, like a white Irish parent, you still have to navigate this adversity in ways that a white Irish person would not. And it's another layer of like expected resilience, but it's the flip side of it. So some people just talk about how like creative they are about navigating that adversity. So within the theme of adversity, what did I want to make sure? Navigating adversity is sense making. So the hyper awareness is like paying attention all the time to everything around me. Then we've got a different layer to it, which is sense making. So you could say, I got ghosted for a job interview. Like they said I did great and everything was awesome. And then when I followed up with them, nothing happened. Nobody called me. Nobody emailed me back. Was it because I'm from, Kenya? Or was it because they just didn't have their shit together? I'll never know, but I still have to wonder. Another example is just like the microaggressions. Like, what does it mean? Like, why are you saying my name wrong? Are you doing it on purpose? Why don't you care enough to remember how to say my fucking name? And sometimes, like, some of the people that I talk to, their name is not hard to say. I don't understand why this was something that came up. It really shocked me. And then sense making in terms of like in the textbooks, the medical textbooks, there are certain skin conditions that are not being shown on people with darker skin. So they're going to go to the doctor and have something going on with their skin, and the doctor isn't going to be able to diagnose them properly right away because they weren't fucking taught how to look at someone's skin that isn't white. Or something like sickle cell anemia, which is an illness that often affects people of African descent. If it's not in the textbook, how can you possibly expect that doctors are going to, one, know what's going on with you, two, take your word for it? Because it wasn't in the textbook and they didn't learn it. How would you know more about my job than I do? And three, like, get the help they need and some of these things are urgent. When you have something going on with sickle cell anemia, it can be urgent. And if the doctor doesn't know what the fuck they're looking at, how can they help you? And how do you make sense of that? So like, I'm here trying to get my education, but you're telling me that my health doesn't matter and I'm supposed to know what to do with that. And not saying to my face that my health doesn't matter, but like it's not even in the fucking curriculum. How am I possibly expected to? What do I do with that? It's existential. It's an existential threat. 5, the fifth theme was perceived conditions for workplace well being. So that means I'm looking around and I'm making a judgment on how I think workplace well being is happening or not. So sometimes people would say stuff like they've got supportive managers, or they feel like they do have psychological safety, or they do have welcoming spaces. So another thing to notice, like even though some of these themes are really heavy, there were still a lot of good things happening. That's the complexity of the experience of being a person of color somewhere. If it was all bad, if every single bit of it was bad, you would probably want to leave. But if it's not, or if you're trying so hard and being so careful and so positive in your mindset, you're going to find good things. You're going to make the most of your environment in every way as much as you can. So people did talk about the things that I mentioned, plus they talked about work-life balance, well-being packages, perks like food or breaks, or a casual workplace culture without a hierarchy, or people being encouraged to take sick leave when they need it. But other times, people were saying stuff like, if I feel like I can't speak up, how am I supposed to feel good at work? If my contributions don't matter, how am I supposed to feel good? Or if my colleagues are rude to me, or, even if I'm being treated fine, not great, but okay. But then I'm hearing my coworkers or overhearing my coworkers saying shit about somebody else who is not white. That's still going to bug me. That's still going to be a problem for me. That still creates a hostile workplace environment. And that just creates like another level of stress if anyone feels like they need to speak up about it, because you're at risk of being like, the annoying person who's pulling the race card, when really you're just trying to advocate for a fair workplace environment for everyone. And you shouldn't have to hear people fucking talking shit and saying racist things when it's supposed to be a professional environment, especially if there's any DEI, EDI stuff like in your training, and then you still turn around and hear people saying weird shit about other races. It's just like you have to like flip in and out. Like, do I feel good about this workplace or not? Do I feel like I have workplace well-being or not? I don't know. The perks are good. I get as much time off as I need, but then like, I don't know, my manager runs away every time I try to talk to them. Like, I'm the only person of color in this work environment, and they act like there's something fucking wrong with me, and I'm trying so hard to fit in, and people are just being fucking weird. Like, I guess I have workplace well-being on paper, you know? The sixth theme was experiences of support. So hopefully this, is another thing that helps not make this conversation too heavy. But there were some amazing examples in my interviews where people were talking about how supported they were, without really having to, put a lot of effort in. They weren't trying to bend themselves into a pretzel to prove themselves. People were saying like, oh, I see how much education you have. I see the experience that you bring to this place, and I want to help you. I want to support you. Or like people who have been supported since they were in university. They just fell in with a really good group of people, a really good group of Irish people who were willing to support them and just help them navigate the culture, and we're with them every step of the way. And I will say, I will take a quote because it doesn't have any of the details. I just wanted to tell you an example of what the person said, how it made them feel when they were supported at their job. And she said it made her feel out of this world. She said it made her have the confidence that she could take risks and she could try all the things that she had ambition to try because people supported her. And the thing is, like, in terms of my themes, when I was saying like navigating adversity, um, part of that, the opposite of that, the other side of that coin, is it seemed like people clung so much to those times when people were good to them. Like, these women were talking about like how much it meant to them even if a few people were in their corner. And I don't know if the average Irish person feels like they have a lot of people in their corner. I hope that they do. Maybe it's a culture where a lot of people are feeling like they're not supported or people don't notice them. However, that wasn't the scope of my study, so it's not for me to say. All I can say is for the women of color in the study who I spoke to, it meant a lot to them when people were supportive. And it meant everything. So think about that. No matter where you work, no matter who you are, think about that. How can you make somebody else's experience of working with you and the environment that they work in better for everyone? Everyone, even if you're not a manager, has the ability to do that, and it goes really far. And you don't have to be fake about it, and you don't have to go out of your way for it. But the more that you can do it from a genuine place, an honest place, it really truly makes a huge difference. It'll never go to waste because it's coming from your own set of values and how you want to show up in the world. So I did also do, moving on to the actual positive psychology intervention. And I know this video is getting long, so if you're still here, thank you so much. I did do a few themes on the character strengths activity, the positive psychology intervention activity where people journaled. So generally, there are positive outcomes. So the quantitative part, the survey, we saw that there were some positive outcomes for relationships, accomplishment, and overall well-being. But what does that sound like in people's own words? Well, they were talking about feeling well-being, satisfaction, joy, a sense of accomplishment, a sense of having learned an important lesson, a sense of having learned something new about themselves, or unlocking a certain dimension or facet of themselves that they weren't aware of or that had been neglected or lying dormant. So that was a really beautiful thing. Another theme was self-efficacy and self-awareness. So I kind of bled these two together in terms of how I'm speaking about them. But if you're focusing on a strength, especially a strength you either didn't realize you had or hadn't been focusing on before, and now you're turning your awareness to it and using it in action, it makes you feel like you are more capable. It also makes you feel like you're paying attention to yourself in a way that is meaningful and impactful, and in a way that can serve you in the long term. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then within this sub theme, in terms of the self-efficacy, people were talking about the ease of use. So the way I set up the activity, I tried to make it as easy as possible for someone with a very busy schedule. And so they said that that was the case for the most part, although time scarcity still came up. It was still something for a few people. They felt like even though they tried really hard to keep on top of it, it was just a lot for their busy schedule, or they would forget, and that's okay. We weren't looking for perfection, just, you know, try it, essentially. And then their attitudes towards the positive psychology intervention and the language used in positive psychology in general. So this was important. So I talked about language before in terms of women of color. Do women in Ireland who are not white even feel like that is a good term? Is it a colonialist term? Is it a violent feeling term? Perhaps some people feel that way, but it's what we could use to try to get the audience that would that we were looking for. Um, and then, so in terms of the language of positive psychology, positive sounds a little bit Pollyanna-ish to people, because they're thinking like, oh, okay, like, so I have to be happy no matter what, or like good vibes only. Like, why does it sound like that? I am a person who has emotions that are good and bad. I feel negative and positive emotions. Um, Even saying good and bad in terms of emotions is problematic, because there's no bad emotion, there are only emotions. Some of them feel good and some of them feel bad, and maybe that's a better way to frame it. Positive doesn't work for everyone. Positive psychology feels like you're asking someone to be happy no matter what, and to report that they're always feeling good, and if they don't, they were a little bit nervous about that. But then a lot of people said that their experience was great and they enjoyed it and it was kind of fun. So those were the themes of my study on women of color in Ireland and their workplace well-being experiences and their experience of a positive psychology intervention. Thank you so much for sticking with me. If you're still here, I would love to continue to talk to you about different things now, not necessarily about Ireland. I've done a lot of traveling. I've lived in Japan, I've lived in Australia, I've worked in different industries. I have a lot of opinions about things, so there's still a lot more to come on this channel, and I hope that you'll stick with me. Thanks for watching.